headlines, sorting through the media bias, exposing the propaganda, and challenging you to use your brain. It's time to tap into the truth.
Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed time to tap into the truth. Welcome to tonight's broadcast. I hope wherever you are, you've had a wonderful day. It is 10 p.m. Eastern Time here on October the 10th. And we are coming to you live from historic Roane County, Tennessee. I am your host, Tim Tapp. Today, as you can tell by the title, we're asking the question, what is it that costs $634 million? And no, it wasn't a cameo for Dr. Evil. $1 million. But before we get to that, we're going to touch on a few other subjects. Obviously, the government shutdown, if you can call it that, is still in full swing. Well, as full as it's going to get. And I'm continuing to ask the question exactly how is it that we've gotten to a point in this country where park rangers are now being used like paramilitary units, and senior citizens are being bullied and made to stay in hotel rooms, and people aren't being allowed to pull off the side of the road miles away from parks so that they can see a mountain. As we consider these things, some of the other things we really need to keep in mind is that these are far from the only questions we should be asking. For example, did you know that furloughed workers for the federal government may very well be getting paid twice? Yes, that's right. While most of them are not being paid right now, technically they are laid off from work, which means legally they're allowed to file for unemployment. And most of them will in fact receive unemployment benefits. But here's the thing. Congress has already authorized for furloughed workers to receive back pay for the time that they're off the job during the shutdown. Many of these workers could choose to file state unemployment claims, creating overpayments that the states will then have to claim back after the shutdown ends and federal workers are given their pay. Now, is anybody else wondering how it is that the furloughed workers are going to get paid later on for not having went to work? It's kind of hard to feel sorry for or feel bad for folks that are in fact essentially getting a paid vacation. Granted, they're not going to be able to get their checks right now when they ordinarily would get them, but we're already seeing signs that the leadership amongst the Republican Party in the House are weakening and beginning to buckle, so chances of this shutdown continuing for very much longer are slim at best. The House already offered a temporary increase of the debt ceiling in order to facilitate further negotiation on reopening the government. Of course, the occupier is already on record for saying exactly why it is he's not interested in any of the deals that the GOP has to offer. Why is that? What's on the record, you may ask? Well, a couple of days ago, back on the 8th, Obama was being asked during his little press conference he gave. CBS reporter Mark Knoller asked Obama why he refused to go along with any of the House bills to fund programs, like Head Start or veterans benefits, while the government shutdown was going on. And Obama's response was, if Republicans aren't feeling any political heat, then nothing happens. What? Seems like nothing is happening as it is. I mean, after all, this shutdown, if that's what you want to call it, really has been an exercise in futility in so much as Obama has ordered the closure of things that have required the government spending way more money in closing than it would have spent just leaving them open. You know, little things like the national parks, for example, which, by the way, don't belong to the federal government. See, that's the tricky part. That's the one part that a lot of folks tend to miss. I mean, I even find myself occasionally overlooking the fact that these federal lands, in this particular case, no, it's not like these are military bases. It's not like these are nuclear facilities. These are the open lands. That means that belongs to us, the American citizens. We, the people, own that. And we don't need permission to go into the open lands. The federal government, in fact, does not have the right or authority to tell us we cannot go hiking on the public trails. That's why it's called public. Ultimately, we have to face the fact that the Commander-in-Chief, as he wants to be considered, has refused to show any leadership of any real meaning, because true leadership means that Mr. Obama would be actively taking a role in trying to minimize the pain felt by everyone as a result. That's the job. Not that any of these guys, Occupier or the folks in Congress, have a clue as to what public service means anymore. You have a small handful of people who just recently arrived, who got there with the ideology and the thought process that, hey, yes, I'm here to serve the public. Everybody else has been there long enough that they're like, we got a sweet deal going here, and we want to keep it that way. But worse than that, there's also a group of people there that are interested in one thing, and that is further expanding their power. They get their little evil, maniacal laugh going, they are ready to take control of your life. And if you don't believe it, take a long, hard look at just the health care law. Got into a discussion earlier today with a friend of mine on Facebook. It's a Facebook friend. Don't know her particularly well personally, but, you know, we've met before, so we've got it. It's not like one of those countless unknown Facebook people. I know who she is. She knows who I am. And I had posted a story about how the health care law is expanding, and unfortunately, as a result, the IRS is also putting in new rules that could not have been enacted without Obamacare being in place, giving the IRS this new authority. So there seems to be some confusion. Point being, as we get to this, and you can find the story that I linked to the Tap Into the Truth Facebook page at The New American. Now, thenewamerican.com has a series of news articles, and one particular one that I came across that I reposted is headline titled, Healthcare Law to Fine Hospitals That Provide Free Services to the Poor. Now, I will read some of this article for you in case you're interested, and the rest you'll have to look up for yourself. I do like for you to do your own homework. Essentially, it quotes that the new healthcare law is full of increased costs to taxpayers in the form of taxes, higher premiums, and, of course, fines. In fact, the healthcare law may punish charitable hospitals for treating uninsured Americans by issuing large fines to those institutions that continue to provide treatment to uninsured Americans. Now, they're quoting a report in the Daily Caller that stated that a new provision in Section 501 of the Internal Revenue Code, which, of course, takes effect under Obamacare, sets new standards of review and installs new financial penalties for tax-exempt charitable hospitals, which devote a minimum amount of their expenses to treat uninsured poor people. With approximately 60% of America's hospitals classified as non-profit, this can prove to be a substantial amount of money in penalties. Hospitals that fail to meet the new standards could face fines upward of $50,000. Now, according to people from the Americans for Tax Reform, added that the new law requires tax-exempt hospitals to regularly prove that they are necessary by filing paperwork with the IRS. It requires tax-exempt hospitals to do community needs surveys and file additional paperwork with the IRS every 3 years. This is, of course, to prove that the charitable hospital is still needed in their geographic area. Needed as defined by Obamacare and overseen by IRS bureaucrats. And, of course, failure to comply with this or to prove this continuing need could result in the loss of the hospital's tax-exempt status. The hospital would then become a for-profit venture paying income tax, hence the positive revenue source. Well, in essence, that's really a big part of what Obamacare was about in the first place. Why do you think they wanted the IRS enforcing it? We're talking about a health care law that has very little to do with improving health care or protecting patients. Now, the argument that I had with my Facebook friend stemmed from the fact that she simply posted a link to a PDF file of the actual Patient Protection and Affordable Health Care Act and said, please read, rather than talking about the truth when just quoting someone else. Now, first of all, let me say this much. For everyone who listens to the show and for everyone who visits the website at tapintothetruth.com, visits the Facebook page, my job isn't to convince you of anything. My job is to try and make you think. I challenge you to use your brain. Now, there are occasions that I will unquestionably and undoubtedly challenge the status quo and whatever the mainstream media is trying to spin for the day. But ultimately, my point is to provide you things that you may not come across. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm agreeing with or endorsing any particular story that I will repost. If I think it's interesting and I think that it would be worth your while to investigate it further to find out how much truth there is to it, I will put a link there. So what I want to encourage people to do is to learn how to research for themselves, how to get to the bottom. Never, ever take anyone's word for it. But also, no matter how ridiculous something may sound, never simply overlook or dismiss something that someone's trying to tell you. Because you never know which one of those crazy loons are actually going to be on to something. In this particular case, these fines are defined as necessary by the IRS because by law, starting at January 1st of 2014, if you don't have health insurance, technically you're a criminal because you are breaking the law. Now, this is a law designed for the federal government to get more money. That's what they're interested in. That's what they want. Cash. Money. Big time. Bring us the bills. It's a way of infringing upon those wonderful tax refunds. It stops being a refund when you start getting back more than you paid in, for the record. They want to get a chunk of that back because they just can't get enough money. They can't because they want to spend so much more. It goes back to the whole debt ceiling argument. Which, by the way, Obama's statements over the debt ceiling have been called out a multitude of times, and now even Moody's has come forth, and they have made their public statement involving the fear-mongering and Obama's attempts to force the markets downward, which normally it doesn't take a whole lot to make that happen, just a certain level of uncertainty. But again, Obama and company simply weren't happy with the market's reaction to the looming debt ceiling crisis. So he goes out, and Obama himself starts making a series of speeches about how this time is different and we need to pay attention because those nasty Republicans just might not raise the debt ceiling. There still seems to be a big gap in understanding, and now even Moody's is calling him out on it. Late Thursday morning, that was earlier today, House Republicans offered Obama a debt ceiling increase, a temporary one, in return for a conference on the budget. The budget that doesn't exist, by the way. They just want CRs now. They want continuing resolutions. A budget would require them to go on the record for what they support instead of just going along to keep things going. Now, Obama has been saying for more than a week now that the United States could default on its debt and that Republicans in the House want it to happen. Well, nobody wants it to happen. It turns out not only was Obama wrong and reckless in bringing up default, but it isn't going to happen, according to major credit rating agency Moody's. One of the nation's top credit rating agencies says that the U.S. Treasury Department is likely to continue paying interest on the government's debt even if Congress fails to lift the limit on borrowing next week, preserving the nation's sterling AAA credit rating. In a memo being circulated on Capitol Hill Wednesday, Moody's Investor Service offered, quote, answers to frequently asked questions about the government shutdown and, the federal debt limits. The occupier has said that unless Congress acts to raise the $16.7 trillion limit by next Thursday, that's the 17th, the nation will be at risk of default. Well, in a memo dated October 7th, that was just 3 days ago, Moody says that's not true. And it's not, and I'll get into that in a second. But in their memo, quote, we believe the government would continue to pay interest and principal on its debt even in the event that the debt limit is not raised, leaving its creditworthiness intact. Excuse me. The memo also went on to say that the debt limit restricts government expenditures to the amount of its incoming revenues. It does not prohibit the government from servicing its debt. There is no direct connection between the debt limit, actually the exhaustion of the Treasury's extraordinary measures to raise funds, and a default. So, Moody's, one of those folks, organizations, led by folks that are still fairly well respected in the field of finance, stepped forward and said to the people, Obama's lying. What? I can't believe that. Not the occupier. He would never lie to me. He is the Obama. And guess what, folks? He's been lying about that since the beginning. There are laws on the books that require him to pay the debt first. Raising the debt ceiling is not required in order to pay the debt. And all he has to do is pay the interest and some of the principal. And the thing is he doesn't want to cut spending on some of the other programs. That's why he's trying to bully his way around. And I know, if you listen to the show, you've heard me say this part a million times, but it still comes down to the fact that it is as simple as he wants to continue to spend more than what we have coming in, because that gets us closer to financial collapse. Now, whether that's his actual intent or whatever, he's still buying votes. So, at any rate, going to take a really quick break, and then when we get back, we'll continue on to today's main topic. So stay with us, and we'll be right back.
Tap into the truth. Check us out at tapintothetruth.com for our latest blog posts and for links to all of our past broadcasts. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and to follow us on Twitter. That's Tap Into the Truth, right here on Spreaker Radio.
Yes, that's right. We are back. Thanks for staying with us. We are talking about what cost $634 million. Anybody care to take a guess? Well, if you weren't living under a rock today, you probably already know the answer. As this information came out today, it is, in fact, everyone's favorite new website full of glitches, healthcare.gov. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. The federal Obamacare website cost taxpayers more than $630 million, nearly 7 times its original estimate, which was $93 million. New figures revealed today. Yet it will likely take months to get it running properly following its disastrous rollout last week. Even those hoping to enroll instead experienced an online nightmare, with websites crashing, refusing to load, and failing to offer comprehensive choices. It's like trying to repair a car while someone's driving it. That's a quote from George Edwards, a computer scientist and professor at the University of Southern California. He made that statement during an interview to Fox News. The administration has tried to explain away the problems as a result of heavy traffic. But take away the volume, and it works, according to the occupier and his chief technology advisor, Todd Park. who made that statement in an interview with USA Today. But technical experts say the problems are inherent to the design of the website itself. And that's really where we run into problems, isn't it? Tens of thousands of people who've tried to register since the website went live on October 1st have been blocked from enrolling and asked to reset their passwords. Luke Chung, an online database programmer, told CBS News that despite repairs over the weekend, the entire site needs to be completely overhauled. It wasn't designed well, it wasn't implemented well, and it looks like nobody tested it. He also went on to say that it's not even ready for beta testing, as far as I'm concerned. And he also added that I would be ashamed and embarrassed if my organization delivered something like that. Well, Luke hit the nail on the head. The Department of Better Technology, a private company that builds software for governments, claimed that CGI, the company contracted to build the site, was not qualified to do the job. So, I guess somebody that works for the company knew Obama? Maybe they were campaign contributors? Major big-time donors? Well, it certainly wouldn't be the first time federal dollars got shifted to someone that, in fact, were just major contributors and big-time donors, would it? Ultimately, it still comes down to this. The website was not ready. This law was passed and put in effect before the midterm elections previous to the past presidential election. How many years does that mean? 3 years! 3 years! 3 years! Really? Yes, really. 3 years ago, they knew this was coming. I built my website, and you can probably tell if you look at it, so built my website as it sits in less than a day for less than $100. Okay? It functions exactly the way I need it to for what I do with it. Now, granted, they'll need something more. A lot more. So it would cost more. But $634 million for something that doesn't work? For something that doesn't seem to have even been beta tested? Something that, according to experts in the field, will stand up and tell you isn't ready to go to beta testing yet. It's not ready. It's not calculating properly. The reports are all over the place that the quotes for the policies that are being put forth aren't even accurate either. The insurance companies have been complaining left and right. Several of them have come forward. They said a week before they went live, this is still an issue. It's not working. You need to either fix it or delay. Well, we've already heard the whole delay spiel. So what's the point? Why do they not want to delay? Well, that's obvious, folks. They don't care about the businesses being postponed because they know they've got them. But they're also hoping to get campaign contributions for this upcoming midterm elections. You know, 2014 has some midterm elections going on. They'll be over by the time the corporate mandate goes into effect. So they're hoping to get one last major round of big-time donations. In the process, the individual mandate has to go into effect. Why? Because the more everyday average rank and file Americans find out about Obamacare, the scarier this gets for all of us. We're finding out it's not going to be cheaper for a lot of us, and we're not going to have an option to get away with trying to save up our money and finding a better option. It's just not available. Now, it's sad that we as Americans are in this situation, but part of this is a result of the consequences, the ramifications of the choices that were made at the ballot box. Now, I have often lamented the fact that I don't believe that the last presidential election was on the up and up. There were too many numerical anomalies in the polling data with no recount triggered. That bothers me. That makes me question why no one has stepped up and challenged these things. But regardless, I still think that the initial election was relatively on the up and up. I just don't think too many folks could get out and vote for John McCain. I just don't. I mean, there's no way that the conservatives could get fired up enough to go out there and vote for John McCain. It's a hard sell, even then. And he hadn't went completely, openly progressive at that point in time, because he was still trying to convince some people that he was, to some extent, somewhat still conservative. But what's really left? The Obamacare website cost us $634 million. And it's basically worthless. It is hard to imagine that this can be perpetrated on the American people, but that is exactly what's happening. It's shameful, it's sad, it's ridiculous, but that's the reality. People tried to get on, people couldn't get signed up. Kathleen Sebelius went on The Daily Show, and I don't even necessarily like mentioning this because so many other people are making such a big deal about it. But the whole point is, Jon Stewart sees how absurd what they're telling us is. We all know, even though this particular website seems to have been horribly designed, you can get daily updates on your web traffic every single day if you log on to the proper administration page. That technology is there now. I have my stuff automatically set to send me email notifications of web traffic once a week. But I can go check the daily totals anytime I want. And some days I do that a couple of times a day if I'm trying to check out things going on after a particular show, see if there's any particular feedback worth taking a look at or responding to. Yeah, and it's just standard administrative stuff. Is Kathleen Sebelius lying when she says she doesn't know how many people have actually signed up? Well, I can't say that she is. What I can say is I don't care how badly designed the website is. If she wanted to know, she could tell us. They want to sell to the American people that all these glitches and the difficulty in signing up is a matter of how much traffic is concerned. But you cannot tell me that the so-called smartest people in the room couldn't anticipate the fact that they were hoping to be able to sign up several thousands of people daily in order to meet their estimated goal for the 6-month open enrollment period. You just can't tell me that's the case. And I think if you're going to use your brain and be honest with yourself, you can smell the bovine excrement there too. At any rate, I'm going to take another quick break, and when we get back, we're going to wrap up the show. So stay with us, and we'll be right back.
Tap into the truth. Check us out at tapintothetruth.com for our latest blog post and for links to all of our past broadcasts. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and to follow us on Twitter. That's Tap Into the Truth right here on Spreaker Radio.
That's right. We are back, and thank you for joining us. Appreciate you staying with us. Also, I failed to mention so far today, but just in case you do prefer to consume your podcasts via iTunes, Tap Into the Truth is available on iTunes, both the Blog Talk and the Spreaker versions of the show, and both versions are now available in the Tap Into the Truth section in TuneIn. So check us out at tunein.com. You can find us there if you are a fan of TuneIn. Also, you can find the Blog Talk version available at Stitcher.com, another great app. At any rate, let's get to the main point of this. I've got a call to action, and I'm going to go real quick with one last story that I want to get to, and then we're going to go into the close. Most of you probably have heard about the trucker protest, the Truckers for the Constitution, doing their big shutdown move of D.C. That's scheduled to start tomorrow, October the 11th, and basically run the entire weekend. I had to say, ever since I heard about this a few weeks back, I was excited to see more people that were willing to stand up for the Constitution. And believe me, between the biker rally and now the truckers, you're hard-pressed to find a group of American citizens that are more patriotic than bikers and truck drivers, because these are the folks that actually get out there and they get to see this country a little more than folks that don't participate in those lifestyles. And it is more than just a job. It is more, when you're a truck driver, it's more than just a job. It is a lifestyle, because you have to be out there and you're going and you get to see people and places in a way that we just don't ordinarily get to see it. So if you happen to be traveling through the Beltway area over this weekend, or if you were planning to, remember, there's going to be a whole lot of truckers coming through. Might make it harder for you to get around. Might want to look for an alternate route. But you see, here's something that I really felt like I needed to bring to everyone's attention before we went any further with that, because it's related to the trucker rally. I cannot verify that this is 100% on the up and up, but there is a rumor going around that Obama, whether directly or indirectly, has plans of using the Department of Transportation and using National Guard units to close down I-495. That's the Capitol Beltway. And they're planning on doing it tomorrow, or at least at some point during this expected rally/protest where the truckers are coming through. Now, sources within the Department of Transportation have revealed that their plan is to use National Guard resources to close federally funded Interstate Route 495 circling the nation's capital, and that these plans have been approved by unknown White House officials and will be implemented Friday morning. That being October 11th, that will be in the morning, in order to thwart the 3-day trucker slowdown announced on the Capital Beltway starting on the 11th. Now, using, of course, the federal shutdown as justification. Now, if they haven't closed the Beltway down yet, and when they're willing to use our park rangers like some type of militia, why on earth would they want to spend the money to call up the National Guard to close down that road? And are they going to close off every other federally funded interstate highway? At any rate, calls to both the White House and the Department of Transportation to confirm this story were not answered by press time, according to the article appearing in the freedomleadershipconference.org magazine. Now, the reason I bring this up is because, first of all, like I said, I admire the truckers for wanting to do this. But ultimately, whether this pans out to be completely true or just a rumor that's been circulated to discredit some conservative websites, the time has come for all of us to come together and tell these so-called public servants that the jig is up and we're not going to be pushed around or bullied anymore. It doesn't matter anymore if you're left or right. It doesn't matter anymore if you're conservative or liberal. It doesn't matter anymore if you are neocon or progressive. What matters now is, are you a freedom-loving American? Because there's very little time left to save this democratic republic. We are a democratic constitutional republic. Somehow, we managed to get in a situation where we are not paying death benefits to the families of our fallen soldiers. No new ones are being renewed. Well, the House immediately, today, passed a new bill that would have fixed that oversight when they meant to include it in the Pay Our Soldiers bill that the Senate actually did pass, and the President went ahead and signed about the same time that the back pay for the furloughed workers was passed. The thing is, Harry Reid said, no, we're not going to pick up that bill. And then the occupier goes over and works out this deal with a great organization. And this organization is actually going to pay these death benefits. And I will go in when I've got a little more time about this organization. But in the process of Barack going and talking to them, he tells them that we'll pay them back when all this mess is over and the government's back in work. Sounds reasonable, and he'll sell it like it's reasonable and like it's the right thing to do. Congress's inability to act left me no choice. But that is completely and totally unconstitutional. The president, or the office of the president, does not have the authority to incur debt. And that's exactly what he was attempting to do. Legally, the United States Congress could challenge that and never actually have to pay them back. And this particular charitable organization probably wouldn't mind. That's not the point. The point is it's once more a new power grab, and it doesn't matter if you like this guy who's occupying the White House or if you're waiting for the next guy to take over. The more we let these people shred our Constitution, the less actual sovereignty remains in the hands of the people. Resistance to tyranny is obedience to God. And I don't know about you, but I serve an awesome God of infinite love, infinite forgiveness, and of infinite wrath. We've got to get our fiscal house in order. We've got to get our public servants back on the framework of walking the line and representing the people, serving the public. They've got to get back to doing the jobs they were elected to do. If they can't, we need to find somebody else who will. This is just one more incident on a long list of reasons why this person should be impeached and removed from office. And it doesn't matter anymore if you like him or you don't. The Constitution is being destroyed, and the minute we lose the Constitution, we lose freedom. Don't mistake it, and don't think I'm wrong on this. Ladies and gentlemen, I always say it at closing time, and that's where we're at. Don't take my word for it. Don't take their word for it. Take some time, do your own research, use your brain. Good night, everybody.